So we're going to do a Q&A. Well, what are we doing? We're doing a Q&A and a bit of a panel talk and an opportunity for you guys to ask some questions. I've got this roving mic here, so if you want a mic and you feel like asking a question or two, then we'll make that happen. And
probably got 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're not gonna do long. So if you could keep your questions, Andreas, do you want to come and join us? If you can keep your questions brief, it would be greatly appreciated. This is not really an opportunity for you to tell a story. It's just to invite a question. Please. Here we go. My mate Susie. Susie and I were flying the flag today on Trafalgar Square with the kids, weren't we? We both spoke to lots of people. So Susie, here you go.
And Jarvis spoke beautifully. My question is, with this understanding of our relationship with the conscious universe, how do you see us being able to work collectively to support the cloud beings and the weather patterns?
I'm sure Andreas would like to...
I just realised you don't have a mic.
For me, it's the power of intention. A very good friend of mine is Lynn McTaggart, and she wrote a great book called The Power of Eight with lots of evidence. I have it. On the power of intention. And one of the things that, if anybody might be interested, we could send out if somebody makes a note, is I put together a very simple guidance based on many different intention experiments as to how we can do that. And it's always, we can do it on our own, but groups of 3, groups of 5, groups of 8, whatever the number is, it's a geometric increase. So it's not just arithmetic, the power of intention. And the more we can do that with the highest intention, then not only does that benefit others and our beloved Gaia, but if we do it without feeling of any benefit to ourselves, there is actually an amazing, mutuality. There's a reciprocity that happens. So the more we can come together with the power of love, with the power of intention, in a sense of unity and service, and as Scilla said, what calls us, then, as Greta Thunberg said the other day, nobody's too small to make a difference.
Did you want Andreas to? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. A different version of the same.
A different version, yes. In the Eddas, there's a debt that was made, and when we prune our hedges, when we build our roads, when we make our houses, we take a little bit from the giants, and that debt, unfortunately, will have to be repaid. And we hope that it will be done in a gentle way. But the stories where I come from are not quite gentle. And the giants will come to get what's owed to them. The wild will retaliate. And the sky, in particular, is the skull of one of the giants that the gods killed very early in creation. And the weather patterns, the clouds, are his brains, and we're always wondering what he's thinking. His name is Ymir. We're constantly wondering what he's thinking. So that debt is something that clearly has worried our ancestors for a long time. But each time you cut the flowers, each time you build a house, that debt accumulates.
Restore. Quick. Who has a question? Does anybody have a question? Yeah?
How do you deal with cynicism? Just a bit of background. I mean, obviously there's cynicism all over the place at the moment. I don't want to talk about politics, but when it comes down to an example with like Extinction Rebellion or any of the kind of uprisings that are happening at the moment, there's always people that want to kind of break those things down, and whether that's through laziness or whether that's through them just not dealing with grief and just blocking things off. But yeah, I just wanted to see your thoughts on how we cope with that and what advice you would give for us to cope with that.
Maybe Scilla could run with that one. You've given a lot of conflict work.
I think cynicism is despair, basically. and it comes from despair. And really and truly, the best way that I've found to deal with people who are despairing is to listen to them. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. But just to say, tell me more. Tell me how you really feel. And then keep even asking them questions and saying, if you can I read back to you what I'm hearing, and not just the words that I'm hearing, but what are the feelings I've sensed that are behind your words. And then you get into a dialogue, and you move from I'm right and you're wrong, which is the brain, to the heart, which says, oh my God, is that how you feel? And I think it takes a bit more time, but it's a lot more worthwhile time than judgment.
I wholeheartedly agree, and thank you for that. I found it interesting reading an article by Ben Fogel a few weeks ago. Apparently the commissioning editors in most of the terrestrial channels now are commissioning what they call happy hacks. And they have a sense that the cynicism, it's like a tide. You know, there's an ancient sense that when you get to one extreme, the tide turns and it comes back. And so, you know, from their cultural perspective, the tide is about to turn and come back into less cynical perspectives. So I started to watch, this is really sad, I started to watch a programme called The Repair Shop a while ago. If you ever catch it on BBC Two at 7 o'clock, it's incredible, because it's not pink slippers, it's stories of real people who have sadness and challenges in their lives, and yet they're supported in literally healing something in their lives that mean a lot to them. And you see some of them coming in, and they are pretty cynical. And then you see them at the end of it, and it melts, because somebody's listened, as Scilla said. Somebody's heard their story and sort of, you know, sense their sadness and their despair, and help them to find a way of healing for themselves. So we can all listen.
It's a great example.
Do we have any more questions? No? Oh, there is one. Do you need a mic?
I'm a noisy person.
Go. Speak quietly.
Hello. What do you have to say? What advice do you have? And share thoughts on how have you processed your grief? Yeah.
A 30-second answer to this. I think anger was important in that process, because it shows you the boundary, where the boundaries have been, where your own boundaries have been transgressed. So anger was a natural process to have first. And I think then, once you realize that your boundaries have been crossed, then you can move into the grieving. And it's that which I sense has the most appropriate place to find wisdom and some kind of a jewel at the end of the tunnel. It's as if your sorrow carries within it some great potential. That's how I've experienced it. You had to go through it, and it's never easy. So much easier than said.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jude's definitely having the last word here. When I was 10, my third brother was killed, and it was in an age of very little emotional intelligence, and my parents didn't have any, and they didn't know what to do with their grief, so they just shut down. And us kids didn't know what to do. And it took me years and years and years to surface even a tear, and then it came in floods. But what I found is that, as you were saying, what we have to do is walk towards it. Everything that we fear and that is really ominous in our lives, that visits us at 3 o'clock in the morning, threatening us and accusing us and criticizing us. Does anybody have an inner critic? And does it visit at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, I'll tell you what, the only solution I've found is, because mine used to wake me up and then I'd toss and turn and then I'd never get back to sleep properly. So I found the only solution was to get up and go downstairs and make a cup of tea and come back up and put 2 cushions. And this is me, and this is the inner critic. And so I would say, why did you wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning? And then I would go and literally sit on the other cushion and answer in its voice. And it would say, well, you haven't prepared for tomorrow and you've no idea what you're going to talk about and you're going to fall flat on your face. So, just a waste of time trying to tell you something. So I'd come back to my cushion and I'd say, that's not very helpful. Because you have to call your critic. And so then I would go back on his, it was a dragon actually, I would go back on his cushion, I would sit there and from my cushion I would say, will you please tell me what you really want me to know? And then he would begin to tell me. And I maybe have to ask 3 or 4 times. But always under the claw of the most fearsome dragon is a diamond. And what we have to do is to get near enough to the dragon and know his voice is our own voice and open that dialogue so that he will lift his claw and let you see and feel and use the diamond.
Thank you for that.
I'm fine because I've got this, so be feedbacking. The last word. When I was 2.5, my mother divorced my biological father, so I never knew him. And then when I was 10, my adopted father died. And when I was 19, my first love dumped me via a letter. By which time I decided enough was enough. And so instead of grieving, I took refuge here. I literally locked my heart down. I closed it down because it was just too painful to be there. And so my heart was closed down. I wasn't cruel to anybody and kind, but my heart was essentially shut down from the age of 19 to the age of 50. And it took me that long to realise that I hadn't protected myself from closing my heart down. I'd imprisoned myself, and a prison of my own making. And so there's something about, and you had that courage, at 3 o'clock when you were woken up, you could have turned around, closed your ears, done whatever, but you had the courage to enter into that dialogue. It took me all that time, and literally to break down where my heart was just cracked open and I had no choice, to then open myself up to the possibility and the grieving, and from that grieving, release. So I don't know if anyone here that resonates with anyone, but I know in all my travels and all the work that I do, there are very, very, very many people who love is so painful, loss is so painful, that unable to deal with that as part of living, part of life, part of all those amazing stories that Andreas shares, we close ourselves down. And in closing ourselves down, we imprison ourselves, we think we're keeping ourselves safe. And it's only when we have the courage to open up, to grieve, to let go, that those shoots of new possibilities begin to sprout.